Hello Misfits and welcome. Amanda here, and today's video is going to be 5 more ways that you can change Curse of Strahd for the better. It's been roughly a year since my last Curse of Strahd video, so I figured it was high time to revisit the topic, especially since it's October and I know a lot of people are jumping back into that campaign again, so let's talk about it. And just FYI, these are all things that I tried in my own game when I ran it, so they are Misfit tested and approved, but what works for me and my table might not work for you. So take all of this with a grain of salt, use what you like, ignore the rest. And of course you can expect spoilers for the Curse of Strahd campaign in this video. So, if you're a player in this particular campaign, please go watch something else. Do not spoil the game for you. Trust me, the surprises and the shocks are well worth it in Curse of Strahd. So this is really just for people running the game or intending to run the game. Sorry. Number 1, introduce a wild magic effect when in the presence of the Mardukov gems. So a sort of side plot in the Curse of Strahd campaign is finding the Mardukov gems, these special gems that are scattered around the world that are needed to kind of revitalize the Wizard of the Wines. So I liked to introduce this sort of wild magic effect when in the presence of these gems, just to sort of spice up combat around those scenarios. And also, I mean, you have to decide where to put one of the gems. They only give you the location for 2 of them, so it's up to you to decide where the 3rd one is. I put mine in the old bone grinder mill, but you might choose to put yours somewhere else. But it was a lot of fun to introduce wild magic to the combat scenarios that happened around these gems. At the old bone grinder, it got a little weird. Partway through the fight, a unicorn showed up because that's on the wild magic table, and it ended up helping the party in their fight, which was kind of crazy, but very memorable. Something else that's nice is there is actually a wild magic table for Barovia that has been created. I'll put a link to it in the description below, but it kind of has a little bit of changes and adjustments to the OG wild magic table to sort of better suit the world and lands of Barovia. So that is what I recommend. Introduce some wild magic, have a little bit of fun. I love a good chaotic wild magic moment. Number 2, have Ireena begin to remember her past lives. So Ireena is she's important, but is often portrayed as not very special in the Raw campaign. So I always like to find ways of making her more important. In my previous video, I made her stronger and more capable so that the campaign was less of just a big long escort mission, but something else I liked to do is have her begin to remember her past lives. Because remember, Ireena is the reincarnation of Tatiana, the woman that Strahd fell in love with, the woman that was going to marry Strahd's brother, Sergei. She's had multiple lives. She's been reincarnated more than once. In the campaign, we learn of one other instance where she was Marina. We learn about that in Berez, in sort of a blink and you'll miss it sort of little lore drop. But something that I did is, as the campaign progressed, she began to have these dreams or memories of her past lives, dying at Castle Ravenloft or being killed in Berez. And it kind of added this extra layer of depth to her character, and more importantly, it was a really nice way of introducing some lore about her and her relationship with Strahd and Sergei, and it kind of justified the ending that they kind of give her in the Raw campaign. So base campaign without any changes, if you take her to Krezk and you take her to the pool, she can reunite with like the spirit of Sergei, and she just instantly is in love with him, and you know, they embrace, and then she sort of disappears. Well, if you're running the campaign as is, she's never met Sergei. She's Ireena. She doesn't remember being Tatiana. And so suddenly she's just leaping into the arms of this man she doesn't know. If you have her begin to recall her past lives, then you can justify that reaction. She's remembering her time with Sergei and being in love with him. She's remembering all the hardships she's went through, and so it justifies her wanting to run and be with him. Now, I made some changes to how Sergei is handled, but you'll have to watch my previous video to figure that out if you decide to do it that way. But introducing these memories was a really cool way. It made the characters more invested in her as a person. It made them sort of want to fight to undo this sort of repeating cycle of her dying and coming back. So that was sort of a nice sort of addition that we made to the campaign that really went over well. Number 3, make some changes to the Vistani to make them a little easier to distinguish between each other. And what I mean by that is there's kind of 2 groups of Vistani. There's those that are loyal to Strahd and are kind of evil aligned, and then there are those that are kind of in Madame Ava's camp, and they're a little bit more helpful, or at the very least, more independent of Strahd and his evil doings. So now they have republished the campaign, and I know they made some changes to the Vistani, but I do believe they are still largely the same, in meaning that it's very hard to distinguish good Vistani from bad Vistani. And you might want that in your campaign, but the reason why I would add some distinctions between the two is for one very important reason. If your party gets to Barovia and they encounter some bad Vistani first, what very important Vistani people are they not going to want to interact with because they assume that they're all bad? Madame Ava. You want them to go to Madame Ava. You want them to approach that camp and get that Taraka reading. You want that to happen. So if they assume that all Vistani are evil and don't know how to distinguish between the good ones and the bad ones, they might be reluctant to approach those good Vistani characters, Madame Ava or even Esmeralda later. So something that I did, and I kind of took this from, I believe it's called How We Roll. It was a podcast and they did a playthrough of Curse of Strahd, but I took it from them. But they had the Vistani that were loyal to Strahd kind of show that in what they wore. So those Vistani would wear red and black, or maybe have like his sigil somewhere visible on their person. And this was a good way to sort of quickly clock that those Vistani might not have the party's best interests at heart. Whereas the Vistani that were loyal to Madame Ava, I generally, in my game, had them a little bit more colorful in what they wore, or at least not so much like a uniform. They looked more like regular people. So that might be a change that is useful for you and your table, particularly if your players are a little newer to the game and kind of don't know how to suss out whether people are good or bad and just go off of like appearances and first impressions. If your players are more experienced, then they might have a little bit more nuance in trying to sort of investigate and figure out who they can talk to and who they can't. But my players were pretty new to Curse of Strahd and pretty new to 5e, and so we just weren't quite there yet. So having these sort of immediate visual cues on who was good and who was bad was really useful. Now, I would always recommend finding an opportunity to kind of flip that on its head. Maybe have some Vistani that appear to be loyal to Madame Ava, secretly be double agents, or maybe have some Vistani that seem to be loyal to Strahd, kind of, turn out to be kind of plants and just there to spy on him and stuff. There are ways to kind of adjust that and make it more interesting, but up front, it might be nice to have some visual cues. Number 4, make some changes to the town of Krezk. So Kresk, as it is not very fleshed out. There's really just the abbot and the abbey, and that's kind of it. Your party gets there, deals with that, and then there's not much else to do. But I encountered on Reddit this person, I think it's MandyMod or Mandy's Mods, that has fleshed out not just Kresk, but like the entire Curse of Strahd campaign. But I really enjoyed this particular addition to Kresk. So, let me explain. the party gets to Krezk, and they meet the burgomaster and their family, and their son Ireena, who was very sick previously, but due to the help from the abbot, was able to get better. And they're allowed to stay in his home and sort of investigate the town and see if this is going to be a safe place to keep Ireena. While they're staying there, the livestock starts to disappear. It starts with just, a sheep or a goat goes missing every once in a while. But then it happens more and more often, and suddenly we're having a real food shortage problem, which is really bad in a town in such a cold environment where we can't really grow crops at this time of year. We're relying on our livestock and the stuff that we've saved up to get us through this harsh winter. Now the livestock is really dwindling, and now people are starting to go missing. Your party starts to investigate, and they find out that Ireena, the boy that was brought back from the brink of death, is no longer a boy, but some demon child, due to some creepiness that the abbot has been doing. And he is hungry. He has this hunger that just cannot be satisfied, and he has been eating the livestock, but it's not been enough, and now he's resorted to going after people. This is where your party can confront Ireena, the demon child, take him out, and then they can question the burgomaster's family, particularly the wife, about what she did, who she took him to, and that can lead them to the abbot and lead them to go confront him. This was a really, really fun addition, and I had a lot of fun playing as Ireena, the boy, and every time the party was around him, he was constantly eating food, and it was such a source of comedic relief at first, really man, this kid, he's just real hungry, but then every time they met him, it would be more and more food, to a point where it was just a comedic amount of food he was eating, and those were my clues. And then they find out that he's taking the livestock, and it turned into this big fight out in the street. It was a lot of fun. And then that led them to go confront the abbot. This was a great change, because there really just isn't a lot going on in this town, aside from the one place that you go and look and kind of suss out. So I enjoyed adding this and kind of fleshing that out just a little bit. There are more changes that this person has made to Kresk specifically. I'm going to put a link in the description to the Reddit thread where I found this, and you can go check it out and see what other additions they've made that you might like to include in your own game. Number 5, and this is my controversial one for this list, make it to where Strahd is permanently killable. So, the campaign as is has it to where you can defeat Strahd at the end of the campaign, which allows your party to leave Barovia and go home, but ultimately, Strahd will always come back. He will always rise again, and the cycle will repeat for the next group of adventurers that happen through the mists and into the cursed lands of Barovia. Now, if you're wanting to go for that bleak atmosphere and you want to stay true to that aspect of the game, keep it as is. But for me and my table, I enjoy the classic good triumphs over evil. So, what I did is had it to where he was permanently killable, but only if certain conditions were met. In my game, all the items listed in the card reading had to be collected, but specifically it was his tome that I think was needed in order for him to be permanently killed. So I just had him sort of pseudo-tied to one of these objects, and that can explain why he generally knows where they are or how to track the party if they have them, but also it just sort of gives an explainer for how you're able to kill him. Another way that you could take it, we didn't do this in my game, but it's something to consider. The hags, the night hags in the campaign, if you sort of read up on your night hag lore in D&D, you'll learn that there is an item that hags tend to have on their person called soul bags. So you could have it to where when they defeat one or more of these hags in the campaign, they collect these soul bags, and when they kill Strahd, they could just sort of suck him up into the soul bag, and then he can't come back. That could be another way that you could handle it. But if you have it to where he's permanently killable, then, you know, it really sort of changes how bleak the whole campaign has been. It really brings a nice shining light at the end and kind of makes it just a little bit more uplifting once you've finally defeated the evil in this land. I understand that that is not going to be something that everybody's going to want to do and not something that everybody's going to want to change, but personally, the fact that he can't ever be defeated is just so bleak. It's like, what's the point? What's the point of the whole campaign? We can't win. You know, we can save ourselves, but we can't save all these other people. So just something to sort of consider there as a change to make. But yeah, these were 5 more ways that you can change Curse of Strahd for the better. I still just love this campaign so much. And it's always fun to go back and think about it and sort of revisit it and talk about it again. And yeah, I mean, it was the first campaign I ever ran, so it's always going to be super special to me. So hopefully you guys enjoyed hearing these different little tidbits and changes that we made to ours. All the different things that I talked about, the wild magic table, the sort of different modifications you can make that I found through Reddit, all of those things, I'm going to try to link all the information that I got that from in the description below. And I will also link my previous Curse of Strahd tip video at the end of this one. So hopefully that will be helpful to you guys as you're getting ready to run this campaign and sort of modify it to suit your table. If you would like to support me and my channel, feel free to like and subscribe, but more importantly, leave me a comment down below. Tell me about your own Curse of Strahd experiences. Tell me about changes you're thinking of making, changes you've already made. I would love to hear all about it. In my last Curse of Strahd video, there were just countless posts about how they handled the campaign differently and what worked and what didn't work, and I just really loved reading all of those comments, so please do that for this one as well. I would love to just sort of chat with you guys down below. But with all of that said and done, I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, a great rest of your week, and I will see you again next time. Oh my gosh, I have to tell you guys a story. Okay, so, you know my bookcase back here. It's been in nearly every single video. There's only one video that it's not in. The things on it have changed over time. You know, I added some lights and then some more lights. But it's been a place where I can display my D&D books, my Pathfinder books, and various little odd bits and bobs and things that I enjoy and that are nerdy. One such bit or bob that I had on the shelf was kind of a weird item, okay? So my current campaign has a lot of Lovecraftian themes, and me and a friend were on a trip to New Orleans, and we saw these kind of snow globes that had like tentacles in them, and it looked super cool. So she got me one for, I think it was my birthday, just to sort of honor the campaign. Well, a thing happened the other day where that shelf with all the stuff on it kind of broke and everything went tumbling to the floor. And wow, did it take a long time for everything to fall down, but eventually it all did. And so I walked over there to survey the damage. And, there's several things on that shelf that are breakable. I've got a couple wands in there that are a little fragile. Those survived. I have a hand-painted glass cup that one of my players painted for me and for my first character, and remarkably that was fine. Books were scattered left and right, and then I find the remains of a snow globe with nothing in it, which is not a fun thing to find. So then I have to go looking for a tentacle, for an octopus tentacle, somewhere in my apartment on the floor. I did find it, and then I had to clean it up. And then my entire apartment smelled like formaldehyde, which was not ideal. It was not an enjoyable experience. I never thought, You know, I thought the worst thing I'd have to, like, pick up would be, like, you know, like a dead bug, or, like, you know, if my dog gets sick. Octopus tentacle was not on my list of gross things I might have to deal with. Yeah, I'm a little sad that it did not survive the great bookcase collapse of 23, but the bookcase has been reassembled. The clips that broke have been replaced with metal ones that should not break, and, yeah, but I'm short a tentacle, so, that's a little sad, but now I don't know. If I get one, it will fall and break, and then we'll be back in this whole situation again, and I'm just not sure I'm ready for that. Anyway, I felt like I had to share that. I felt like some of you might laugh at that story. Anyway, hope you guys have a good day. I'll see you next time.